Feeling Good, sponsored by Warren County Community Services. I'm your host, Shelly Abrams, and I would like to wish all of you out there in our audience a very happy birthday. And I say that because my birthday is actually this month, and I am sharing those birthday greetings by saying celebrate all year round. And because it is my birthday month, I invited a very special guest today. And I don't even know if he knows this or not, but Gary Rossignol, who is the manager and one of the founders of one of my very favorite local musical groups, Bluestone Ivory, is a gift to me as well as a gift to everyone that has ever heard Bluestone Ivory. So welcome, Gary. Thanks for being here today.
Thanks, Shelly. Appreciate it.
Very good, very good.
And happy birthday.
Well, thank you.
I should have brought a cake.
Well, no, just your music will be fine. And we will be playing some of the music of Bluestone Ivory during the show. But right now, we are just going to find out more about you and more about your background in music, professionally, and I just think it's so intriguing. I mentioned today that I was reading your bio on your website. I actually have been a Bluestone Ivory groupie since I was introduced to the group in probably 2012, something like that, as part of a golf group. And they said, oh, we're going to play golf, and then we're going to go down to Coney Island and Moonlight Gardens for dancing on Saturday. And that was featuring Bluestone Ivory. And that was the first time I had ever heard the group. And I think I have followed you everywhere you've ever played ever since.
Oh, that's neat.
So first of all, tell us a little bit about you and tell our audience just your intriguing background. I find it intriguing because it's been an evolution, I think, don't you?
There's a lot of stories, and one of the one of the greatest stories I like to tell is everywhere we play, somebody comes up and says, I think you played at our prom back in when we were in high school, or we went to see you at Alexander's in Clifton back in the day, and it doesn't matter. There's so many stories. I've had a guy come up and said, oh, I knew a couple guys that used to play with you guys. I said, oh yeah? I said, what were their names? He said, well, they were from so-and-so high school, and it wasn't Moeller. I said, well, they didn't play with Bluestone Ivory because we all started at Moeller High School.
Okay.
When I was a senior.
So there you go. So you started just as, what would you say, were you part of the band, the high school band program? Is that how you came together?
When I got into high school, me and 3 other friends got together and we started a little combo called Renee's Orchestra, and we played for Knights of Columbus dances and weddings and the old standards, and it was Ted Donahue and Rick Hagee and myself, and we had a drummer called Fritzy Schatzel. And we played every weekend or so, and through high school, and we got it to be juniors and seniors in high school, and Chicago and Blood, Sweat and Tears hit the market, and we wanted to get into rock and roll. We didn't want to do the old standards, so we added some horn players, a bass player, and Rick got a B3 Hammond organ, and we got a different drummer, and there were 9 of us. And we started out with a name called Sound on Stage, SOS, and there was another Sound on Stage at the time, so our plight was to come up with another catchy name. And Ted Donahue worked in a, now this is the real story of how we came up with the name Blue. There's a lot of stories running around how we came up with the name. But Ted Donahue worked in a warehouse, and he stacked boxes of socks of different colors. And Ted and I were both in the majored in art through high school, and he was very color oriented and very creative. and he saw different colors, the stone, ivory, and blue. He kind of put them all together, came up with Bluestone Ivory, and we thought, that's pretty catchy.
Oh my.
Will that be a name that'll last for centuries? And we thought, yeah, it probably would. So we started as it was Bluestone Ivory.
Oh, wonderful. Oh, great.
That's the real story, folks.
Great story, great story. Well, tell me, when, because I was in the music program, both vocal and the band as well in my high school, and so many memories from all of our productions and so on and so forth. Don't you find that musical training, and did you start on song flutes? We started on song flutes in the 5th grade. I think it was 5th grade when everybody in the 5th grade was issued a little song flute, and we learned how to do fingerings.
They call them recorders?
Recorders. And everybody learned just basic fingerings. You didn't have a choice. It was just one of the classes that was in your regular class. And then, of course, it became, an elective, and if you wanted to follow along with that music. And I found a recorder the other day in a box of things. And I think it was actually one of my kids' recorders from, it wasn't my recorder from the 1960s, but it was their recorder. And yet, those musical memories, just live on and on and on.
Yeah.
And in your case, it turned into not only, a hobby or a passion, but it became a profession with you, didn't it?
Well, off and on, yes, and today it is more of a passionate hobby for those of us who play. My first introduction to music was back in grade school when I was at St. Michael's in Sharonville. We didn't have much of a musical program. They had some vocals, nu, no, na, ne, ni, and then some of that stuff. But I started on accordion, and then I switched to piano, and never did really well with either of those. I tried to play a little bit of sports, and I wasn't a sportsy person. And when I got into high school, I wanted to play in the band, and I always wanted to play saxophone because early on, when I was in grade school, my second cousin is Lonnie Mack. And I went and saw, that was the first professional concert I saw, was Lonnie Mack in Lawrenceburg at the Raceway when I was a kid. And they had 2 sax players, and I was just blew me away. Yes. I went, I'm going to play saxophone when I grow up. So when I was a freshman in high school, Brother Joe Trageser, the band director, he needed clarinet players. And I wanted to play sax, but he said, if you learn clarinet, you can switch to saxophone real easy. Well, and he's right. So I started studying clarinet, did quite well, and after a year of studying clarinet, I bought my first saxophone, and sure enough, the fingering was a little bit different, but the embouchure was very similar.
Right.
And away you go. I started playing sax.
Very good. Well, I was actually a clarinet player as well. So, if we had our clarinet and sax here today, I don't know, I'd let you play and I'd just hold my clarinet. But that transfer of interest early on, and in your family, of course. It sounds like your family heritage was musical.
Oh yeah. My mom played
way.
piano. She could never read. She played by ear. She could hear a song and sit down with both hands, bang it out beautifully. Several of my uncles, they played banjos and guitars and violins. And on Sunday afternoons, we'd go down to Indiana on the farm, and we'd sit around, pick and grin. I mean, the afternoon, there was no TV or radio there. They would play guitar, Chet Atkins guitar, and some banjo, and we'd sit around and listen to them pick and grin all afternoon.
Oh my gosh.
So I was brought up with music in
Very good. And you've passed that along to your family as well.
Yep. All 3 daughters play. My granddaughter and my grandson play. In fact, my grandson's at Eastern Kentucky State University in the marching band now. And my granddaughter, she's wonderful on flute. My oldest daughter, Amy, she would play at in the choir at church, and the music director had fun with her. He would give her a very complicated piece of music to sight read during Mass, and she could sight read it perfectly. So she's just fabulous. And then Jennifer plays flute, and Stephanie plays clarinet. And on Christmas afternoon, after we have dinner and the Christmas thing, they look forward to us getting together, all in the living room, and we upload the Facebook video live, about a half-hour concert of the Rossignol's in our living room to you, Christmas carols.
Oh, that is great. Well, that is something that recently I featured, this is a few months ago, one of my best friends from high school, who's a wonderful pianist. And I noticed how something that was very different, we were Zooming at the time, and so I was interviewing her and letting her play. And Sharp Hope is her name, and she has some CDs online as well, so you can
I'll look that up, yeah.
But something I noticed was she was using an iPad. And so, here she's just going like this, and then all of a sudden she goes like this, and then tap, and I thought, does she have all that memorized? Because I know, like you, she could hear. She had a natural, ear. But here she was tapping to turn the page on the iPad for the music.
Yeah. The music industry has just evolved since the old days, from sound system to lighting systems to the way you read your music. We don't use pages any longer. We use iPads, and it's a lot simpler, a lot quicker. But yeah.
Well, and you've also you have multiple professions. You're in the real estate
I am.
business as
That's how
well.
I make my bread and butter.
Okay, very good. But then you also have your own radio show, don't you?
I do, yeah. It's on Saturday mornings. It's called the Rock and Roll Real Estate Hour. And it was years ago. I was going to a network function, and I met Gary Rasmussen, who is the musical insurance guy.
Okay.
Bob Viney knows Gary.
Okay.
And he introduced himself as the musical insurance guy, and I had lunch with him. I says, well, that's really cute. I like that little tag. How's that working for you? He says, great. He says, well, you're the rock and roll realtor. I went, I like that. So the guys in the band came up with another catchphrase. My house is a rockin' because the buyers are knocking.
I love it. I love it. And we have listened on in the car, especially when you're on and so forth. So
people always ask, how do you put rock and roll and real estate together? This is very well.
There you go. It works. It works out. Well, it pulls people in, doesn't it? I mean,
it makes me different.
Right.
And I did a show a couple weeks ago with my co-star on the show, Reed Young. We did a show on, because he plays in a band as well called Eden, and they play the same genre of music that we do, so we collaborate a lot.
Oh, great.
And so he came on the show, and we talked about how the music production and a real estate production is very similar. You have stage lighting, sound, photography, rehearsals, everything has to be done perfectly, and then the live show happens, and anything can happen in a live show. And the real estate industry is the same way. You have to set the stage, you have to have the right kind of lighting, you have to have the right kind of photography, and you have to deal with the contracts and agreements. You have to have the knowledge and the experience, but anything and everything happens at the very end. It's amazing.
And you have to be able to adjust, don't you?
Yeah,
definitely. Yeah. Well, let's go back to Bluestone Ivory. Tell us the number of members in today's group.
What happened to us? We started in the band room at Moeller in 1969.
Okay.
And we stayed together. There was 9 of us, and we all were at Moeller High School at the time. And I grew up with Rick Hagee and Ted Donahue and a few other guys, and so we played till about 1976 or 77. I had previously left the group in 1974, I believe it was, to go into some other areas, and they broke up then. But I've always watched that movie with John Belushi and Dan Aykroyd. What was the name of that movie?
Was it Blues Brothers?
The Blues Brothers movie.
Okay.
how they got the band back together, and that fleeting thought went through my mind year after year when I'd watch that movie. Says, nah, it's never going to happen. Well, I got the infinite phone call from Bobby Myers after 30 years, and he says, Gary, he said, this is Bobby Myers. He says, we're putting the old band back together. I said, no way. He says, yes, we are. I said, who's in? He started naming off. I says, well, that's almost the whole band. He says, yeah, we've all agreed to do it. We're going to play at our 30-year class reunion.
I love it. Okay.
So we got together for about 6 months, Sunday mornings, and rehearsed every Sunday morning. We put together 3 sets, and everyone but one of them came back to the fold. And Mike Fitzpatrick was our music director then for the new Bluestone Ivory, and Bobby Myers was kind of organizing the whole thing, but we all got back together. We played the reunion, and that was a blast. I mean, we sounded better than ever.
I can only imagine. I mean, the accolades from the audience.
After all those years to get back together, and it wasn't but a few months before Bluestone Ivory got together, I joined the Westchester Symphony Orchestra. I hadn't played for many, many years. And Susan Sherman was putting the community orchestra together. So she was teaching my daughters and heard I played music. She says, well, get a clarinet and join us. And I said, well, okay. So I did and took some lessons. And then I got that phone call from Bobby Myers.
Right.
And so now all the music's coming back into my life again. It's like it had to be meant to be. And when we played the reunion, it went so well. The management of the Montgomery Business Club, where we had the reunion, was going to have a New Year's Eve dance. Wanted to know if we wanted to play. Well, most of the guys in the rebirth of Bluestone Ivory said, we're going to play this one gig and that's it. I'm going to put my horn back on the shelf.
Okay.
So we filled some spots and we played the New Year's Eve gig. And the common denominator was me and Teddy Donahue, because Teddy and I grew up from first grade through high school.
Okay.
And we said, let's keep this going, you know. So we filled some spots, and we continued to play. And since then, Mike Fitzpatrick was on keyboards, and he's passed away. And now we have Rick Schmidt, who's a great. Not too many bands carry B3 organs around with them, but we do. And so we have a crew of guys that I just love dearly. We're more than a band, Shelly. We are a family. We're there for each other.
Well, you can tell that even when we're in the audience and we see you up on the stage.
We have fun.
You do have great fun, and you generate that kind of energy to the whole group. Well, tell our audience if they've never been to a performance.
We have 3 rules with the band.
Okay.
Number 1 is we want to play the music our audience loves and that we like to play. And number 2, we want to have fun. And the 3rd rule is if it stops being fun, we're done. So here we are 21 years. The second time around, we're still going strong.
I was just going to ask you how many years it's been now. That is wonderful. Well, tell me some of the different venues where you've played.
We'll be at Keener Park in Westchester this Saturday.
I actually have that on my calendar.
From 7 to 9. And we play at the Miami Valley Gaming. Of course, through COVID, there was 432 days that we didn't play. That's a long time.
Yes.
And we were all scratching our head wondering, we got to keep this together. A lot of groups fell off the face of the earth. They hung it up. Yeah, couldn't do it. But we stayed together. We Zoom meetinged each other. We individually practiced. And we couldn't wait for the day that we had that next gig that we could prepare for it. And we're going to be at the Sunset Beach Bar and Grill on September the 25th. We're going to be at Miami Valley Gaming on October 23rd. Of course, Keener Park this Saturday. And
I saw you at Moonlight. Well,
Moonlight Gardens every year.
I saw you at Coney Island, but it was not Moonlight Gardens.
Moonlight Pavilion.
It was the Moonlight Pavilion.
We played the last live dance at Moonlight Gardens 2 years ago.
And when we were going in, we said, so what's the reason for the change in venue? Although I have to say the pavilion was very impressive. I mean, it's very, it really accommodated a crowd, but gave us all room.
Coney Island does such a
so
great
forth.
job.
Yeah.
They're great folks to work with. And J.D. Hughes is a sweetheart with WGRR.
Right.
We met him there the first time, and
Right.
he has adopted us as his brothers. He likes to sing a couple Chicago songs, and he says, I'll just say it publicly, I will not sing with any other band but Bluestone Ivory.
Oh, and especially the music of Chicago drew me initially to the group. And I have to tell you quickly this story. When I was at Miami in college, and I think it was probably a concert in probably 1972, and they were playing at the Rubber Bowl in Akron, Chicago was. And I remember going with a friend to that concert, that outdoor concert. And I have followed them ever since. I mean, when they've been at Riverbend, usually it's just when they've been at Riverbend. But I have to admit that when I heard you playing Chicago music, I was like, oh my gosh, they sound just like
I get that all the time.
Chicago. I even heard some people a few weeks ago say, sometimes we think they sound better.
I've heard that too. I don't know about that.
The Chicago group. But there's something about, well, the quality certainly of your musicality.
Hi Fairfield, we're Bluestone Ivory.
But the combination of the horns, the keyboard,
Our vocals are outstanding.
your vocals,
too, yeah.
everything coming together is just so powerful.
I'll have to hand it to our music director, Jim Castrop. Now, we each have our own individual role besides playing. Jim Castrop is our music director, and he writes our charts and comes up with the charts. And he is meticulous. I mean, the charts we have are identical to what is put on the record album. So we don't fudge anything. We don't do it simple. We don't do it our own flavor. We do it like it's recorded. And Rusty Bird takes care of he's our solo. He's retired from the Army band. U.S. Army band.
Okay, so
veteran.
so Rusty actually played in the Army.
In the Army,
band?
yes,
Oh,
yeah.
I did
He
not know that.
He was in the movie. What was that one movie? I can't think of the name of it, but I'll think of it in a minute. But yeah, he's our saxophone virtuoso. So he does all the leads, and of course, with the passing of Ted Donahue, a lot of people thought, well, that's going to end Bluestone Ivory, but his brothers came up to me and they told me in the front yard the night he passed away, you're going to keep the band going, aren't you? So, well, it's a little bit too early to discuss that now, but yeah, we ran across Tom Houndstein, who, when he auditioned for us, he pulled the guitar out that was identical to the one that Ted played.
Oh my.
Turns out they worked at Ford together.
Oh.
They kind of knew each other, but they had a little project at Ford to build a guitar, and Ted built his carbon guitar, and Tom built his identical, and he pulled it out and he started playing the Chicago licks. It's like, this is the guy, So
Meant to be.
It
Meant
was.
to be.
God sent.
Yes.
Ted sent Tom to us.
And I remember one of the first performances after he passed away. I remember being there in the audience because everybody was pretty emotional, certainly about that loss, but yet bringing someone else new into the group, and I did not know that backstory.
We tried 3 or 4 guys. They were all excellent musicians, but the chemistry wasn't there, but it was with Tom. And now this Saturday is kind of an emotional gig for us too, because that was 7 years ago, Tom's first gig with us at Keener Park.
Oh.
And it'll be his last gig with us this Saturday.
Oh.
He's moving to Florida, and we're bringing in a new guy named Scott. And Scott is equally as good. He's the chemistry's right. He fits right in, and he's just a sweetheart. Him and his wife. So.
Oh, that is great.
Yeah.
Well, something else that catches my eye, in addition to the music, is the way you periodically will come out and perform throughout the crowd. And tell us how all that started. And
well, we can't do a gig without Rusty doing his version of A Man Loves a Woman,
right,
instrumentally, and he goes out in the crowd and plays to some of the ladies. And then we started this tradition many years ago of doing Mustang Sally, and the horn players will go out into the crowd with a handful of carnations. And I want to shout out to Lutz Flowers, because they provide all the carnations. They'll deliver them to my door, and they do that because they just love to do that for us.
That is so great.
Thank you, Lutz Flowers.
That is so great.
We do, and then we started another tradition for our outdoor gigs. Several years ago, Ted's wife Jo Lynn handmade some American flags on sticks. Well, she can only make so many at a time, so I found a place that provides them for us. So we will provide 200 to 300 handheld flags, and right before we do God Bless the USA, Lee Greenwood's big hit, we hand them out, and it's I get emotional to see 300 people in the audience waving those American flags, standing while we do that song.
And people of all ages. I mean, I watch the people because I know it's coming. And, new people to the audience maybe, or younger people that are not aware that this is going to happen. And then I see their eyes when they see maybe all of us who are older, or their grandparents or whatever, and they start joining in, and they realize the symbolism.
And it's all to celebrate America.
Right.
It's to celebrate our veterans. And we ask them to stand and be recognized. And of course, our own very Rusty is a veteran. So yeah,
that is just some of those traditions at every show.
And we most of us have agreed that we hate the song Mustang Sally, but we can't replace that with anything. We have to do that song. We go, we got to do Mustang Sally. Yeah, but if we don't do it, we were going to have some angry fans. so we've got to do Mustang Sally.
Well, were you surprised at the turnout for the pavilion when we were all there?
Oh my gosh.
How many would you say were there?
There was about 800 or 900 people there, and I was standing out when people were coming in, and I says, do we have some stars or something playing here tonight? They said, well, you are. I said, well, we're not that big of stars, but people were just hungry to get out for entertainment and to dance and to have fun. And that's what Bluestone Ivory is about. Dancing, having fun. We played a wedding at the Phoenix many years ago, and we were supposed to play 3 sets. We got there in early afternoon, set up. The wedding party was about 45 minutes late. Well, the preacher had to do a half-hour speech. The father of the bride had to do a 15-minute speech. The best man did a 20-minute speech. They had speeches, so we only got 1 set in, and somebody commented to me, says, boy, you got off really easy tonight. I says, got off easy? We came here to play 3 sets. We wanted to play. We wanted them to dance, and we should charge twice for not being able to play.
Well, and you talk about the dancing. I mean, I've taken ballroom dancing, and I've danced my whole life, but I notice that there are groups of people. Now, I don't do this, but I notice other people that bring their ballroom dancing shoes, and they change from their regular street shoes into their ballroom dancing shoes, and then they start going through some of their ballroom dancing routines and so forth.
You'll see that a lot at the Coney Island dances, some of the open dances we do. There was a gentleman that came with a lady regularly, and we nicknamed him Shoes, because he came and he'd sit right in the front and change his shoes, and he had these white shoes and dancing shoes, and they're serious dancers. And we learned early on at Coney Island that the regulars have their tables. The first time we played there, we had our entourage come in and sat up right next to the dance floor, and the management came over, tapped me on the shoulder, says, come here, says, you guys can't have those tables. Those are for the
unofficially official, right?
Unofficially official regulars. So you go up in the balcony. So we
Right.
learned early on we don't take those tables. We
Right.
don't want to get them upset.
Right. Well, and I think, of course, it appeals to something that's very touching to me is you see people who are the dancers, then you see all of us who love dancing, and so
And a group that just like to sit and listen.
yeah, exactly. And then you see the different ages of people there. And I have to tell you, you probably recognized this group at the pavilion. And I wanted to go over and talk to this lady. And she was actually a much older, but kind of a grande dame looking lady. And she was in a wheelchair. And she was watching. And I watched her, and she was watching, and she was moving, in her chair. I could tell she really wanted to be dancing. And I loved it when some of her family members then came over and helped her get up out of the wheelchair. And they all surrounded her and danced with her as a group. And you could just tell how much that meant to her.
The absolute best therapy is music and dancing. Yeah.
Right. Exactly.
So, but yeah, I just need to shout out. We have our crew, which is Doug Schick and Jim Thiesing and Con Ballou. Without them, I mean, they're the guys that make it all work. I mean, without them setting up, making sure everything works right, we sound right, we look right. And I just got to put my big thank you to those guys. And then, of course, Russie takes care of the website. Rick does our set list. I do the management. Lee Heftel, our bass player, he runs our rehearsals, and him and Chappie. So we all have. And of course, Scott will have a job for him. He doesn't know what, we don't know what yet, but he'll have a little job to do.
Right.
But together, we all together work like a well-oiled machine.
Right.
It just gets done, and we do everything right. We formed a business that is BSI Productions LLC. We report our taxes. We don't do any under-the-table cash deals. Everything, even if they give us tips, it goes into the account, gets distributed properly, and we take care of it well.
That is so great. And you mentioned about your tech guys and so forth. They typically don't get the notoriety that all of you do.
We recognize them every gig. Yeah.
But I know you do. And just from having been involved with theater and so forth, I mean, like you say, if it wasn't for them and usually their little tent, near the back of the audience or wherever they're set up, the sound, the lights, everything.
Technically, that's all changed too, because we don't have the big it's all done on a little
Is
pad.
it now?
Yeah,
okay.
yeah,
I remember
wireless.
when it used to be like a big
We used to carry as
and
big as this table, but we
right.
now scaled down to everything's so digital and electronic. But they tell us at the end of the show if something, and they're very musical too. They're constantly going to shows. And our sound guy, he plays guitar, and Con Ballou, he's a computer whiz, and he has great ear. When people compliment us, say, "You guys really sounded great." So, well, it's our sound guy. We play the notes, but the way he mixes it and the way it comes out of the speakers is another thing. And that the speakers are all working, that we look good, the lighting is set up properly, that the gear gets there on time, and everything is clean. So, without, and then we have our photographer, Kathy. She does all our photography work for us. She's at every gig and does some great photography work on our website, bluestoneivory.com.
Right. I was on it today. So, and there you have some of your, samples of your, some of the selections that you play.
And also I have to give a big shout out to my wife, Mary Jo, because she does so much behind the scenes nobody knows. She makes sure that the flowers are there, that the flags are ready, and food, if we're going to have a cookout dinner, which we're going to do this Saturday beforehand. And she just, she's my rock. Without
that is
her,
so
yeah.
great.
And people say, "Oh, what do you play, Mary Jo?" She says, "Oh, I play the radio."
Well, again, it takes everyone, doesn't it?
It does,
takes the
yeah,
whole crew
yeah.
to bring a gig together and have it be so.
And we're the most critical.
amazing.
We'll get done, and of course I video and audio, and we share some of it, and the high points and the low points, and we say we got to work on this, we got to work on that, or the horn section needs to do a section on this song, and if it isn't perfect, it's not right, and we never are perfect, so we're always striving to get better.
Well, it's just it's just such a treat to have you here. And I know initially I asked if maybe we could film this on site at a rehearsal, but you said that might not be
No.
the best situation for an interview. And I thought, well, maybe they practice in a garage or something, or
Yeah.
where do you practice?
Well, we did for years at the VFW Hall in Sharonville.
Okay.
And then when COVID hit, of course, their members stopped going, and so they couldn't keep the doors open. They just sold it. And with Chris Chapman being a member of the, works at Ford, and he's a member of the UAW, I was introduced to the president there. And we've been rehearsing at the UAW in Sharonville.
Oh,
And
great.
we just work out special little deals with them, and they seem to be very happy with us, and we are with them. It's a great facility. We can roll right in, set up simple, do a 3-hour rehearsal, and pack up and be gone in a half hour and get
Really?
a lot done. Yeah.
Wow.
So yeah, when we rehearse, we work. So we couldn't do this interview while we were rehearsing.
Right. They'd say, "Come on, Gary, get back up here. We need you." Right?
Yep, right. We rehearse and take a short break.
Tell me a little bit more about future. You talked about some future plans for the group. Have you ever thought about making, like recording in terms of, more than just the segments?
We have.
online?
Rick Schmidt has written several songs, which we tried performing. They were good songs, actually. Several of them were excellent songs. But when people come to hear Bluestone Ivory, or cover bands, as they label us, I think our music is classified now as oldies, but I think it's classic rock. And I consider we play classic rock. And they want to hear that. They're not happy with original material.
Okay.
So
Okay.
it doesn't go very far. We're not looking to be stars. I have a full-time job. Lee Heftel has a full-time job. Jim Kastrup has a full-time job. Rusty, we're all busy, and we can't go on the road. We play Cincinnati, Dayton, Northern Kentucky. We'll go to Indiana, but that's our range.
Right.
And right now, with the we're getting a little older and slowing down a little bit. If we do 10, 12, 15 gigs a year, I think we're going to be happy. I was looking back at some of our schedules. We were doing 40 and 45 gigs a year. It's like, how did we ever do that?
Well, that's just it. And be working
Yeah.
full time, doing
Right.
something else, but
Right.
then
It was
doing,
difficult to do.
doing this as
But
well.
that's why we need each other. We all
Right.
have to work together.
Well, that is just such a great story about this wonderful group. And I loved what you said on your website, right at the end of kind of your bio. And it was something to the effect of you never stop the music, or the music never stops, or something to that effect, that it just goes on and on and on.
Yeah, we never know when it's going to end.
Right.
But like I said, we set up the 3 rules. We play the music we know and love, and we'll take a vote. Some guys will come in with an idea, and they'll post it on email, and we'll get feedback back and says, I don't particularly care for that song. Okay, so we drop that one, but yeah, I like this one, so we'll pursue it and do it. Can we sing it? Can we play it? Can we do it well? And will our fans like it? That's the next criteria.
Right.
And then as long as it's fun, when it stops being fun, we're done.
Well, I hope that you go on and on. And
Another
on.
3 or 4 or 5 years, maybe.
Well, I don't know if you want to give your website, which you did initially, but if anybody is interested in contacting you about future performances.
Sure. They can call me at 513-777-2402.
Or if they want to buy or sell a house, they can do
They
the
can
same
call that
thing,
same
right?
number too, right? We can help them with that. Yep.
Well, very good. Well, I appreciate it. And I also have to say, I appreciate these vaccination holders that you gave us today. Look at this. This is pretty neat.
Yeah.
And we hope that you get your vaccination card in here. Just put it right in here.
If anybody wants one, they can just call me and I'll send one out to them.
There you go. Love it. Love it. Well, thank
Tune
you.
into my radio show on Saturday mornings. It's on WDJO, which is 1480 AM or 99.5 FM. And I always end the show with a recording of Bluestone Ivory. And we incorporate music with real estate and various topics.
Very good.
Yeah.
Well, I really hope that you enjoy the music you're going to hear as part of this show, and that you will continue to follow Bluestone Ivory, and that you're feeling good. Bye for now.